In this video, I want to focus on an analogy between competitive games and speech acts, and in particular, the speech act of assertion in its relation to the concept of constitutive rules. I will start by Michael Dummett, who argued for the importance of the concept of truth for the practice of assertion through an analogy with games, and then I will explain how this analogy between competitive games and the speech act of assertion is formulated afterwards in the literature in terms of what is known as constitutive rules, very briefly through Williamson and Searle's characterization of constitutive rules. So in order to start to see how Dummett characterizes the analogy, Dummett says in his 1959 paper that we cannot in general suppose that we give a proper account of a concept by describing those circumstances in which we do and those in which we do not make use of the relevant word by describing the usage of that word. We must also give an account of the point of the concept, explain what we use the word for. Now, Dummett wants to apply this principle to the concept of truth. In order to explain what the point of the concept of truth is, he makes an analogy between the concepts of truth and falsity on the one hand and the concepts of winning and losing a board game on the other hand. He says that in a game like chess, we could give a formal description of chess by specifying the initial positions of the pieces and the permissible moves. As such, the game would end when there is no permissible move left, where we could distinguish between two kinds of final positions, winning and losing ones. But now, Dummett argues that this formal description of chess by itself would not provide us with a theory of chess as an activity, because it would leave out one crucial point. Imagine a person who is not acquainted with the activity of playing games in general and would not have and has no previous understanding of the word winning. The formal theory of chess, this formal description of chess, would not be sufficient for this person to be said to have grasped what it is to play chess. She may be playing a variant of chess in which the formal description would coincide with that of chess, but in which instead she is trying to be checkmated by the opponent's king rather than to try to checkmate the opponent's king. So what should be added, according to Dummett, to the formal description of chess in order for this person to be said to have grasped what it is to play chess is the intention of arriving at one particular of the end positions, which is the winning one. So what we should add is that the objective of the players is to achieve the winning position. Now, by analogy, a person would not understand what the concept of truth is if all he has in hand is a method for determining the correct application of the terms true and false to statements. So what we should add to a formal theory of truth in order for this person to be said to have grasped the concept of truth is what is the point of classifying sentences to true and false ones. And according to Dummett, this point is that truth is what we aim at in our assertive practices. He says, just as it's part of the concept of winning a game that a player plays to win, likewise, it is part of the concept of truth that we aim at making true statements. In assertion, the utterance of a sentence, except in certain circumstances, is understood as being carried out with the intention of uttering a true sentence. Now, the analogy between competitive games and assertion has been undertaken by many authors in the debates surrounding the rules of speech acts, and in particular rules of assertion. Williamson and Searle both undertake the analogy to argue for what is known as the constitutive rule of assertion. Let's see how Williamson characterizes the notion of constitutive rules. In Knowledge and its Limits, Williamson defines a constitutive rule as a rule which is essential to an act, such that necessarily the rule governs every performance of the act and is due to the specific nature of the act. According to Williamson, games like chess are constituted by rules. Assertion is analogous to chess in as much as it falls under a constitutive rule, a rule which is essential to the speech act of assertion. Now, Williamson and Searle both are considered as advocates of normativist theories of speech acts, and according to normativist theories of speech acts, there is a certain C rule, a certain constitutive rule, which is formulated as follows. One must assert P only if P has C, a certain property. Now, there are many candidates in the literature for this constitutive rule of assertion, for this property: truth, justification, disposition to know, etc., etc. Williamson himself favors what we call the knowledge rule, according to which one must assert P only if one knows that P, and he considers this knowledge rule as the constitutive rule of assertion. But the point of the analogy between games and the speech act of assertion is that there is a certain C rule, a certain constitutive rule, which necessarily governs every instances of the speech act of assertion. Now let's see how Searle characterizes the notion of constitutive rules. According to Searle, Constitutive rules not only regulate practices, but they also partly define what those practices are. He says, constitutive rule constitutes an activity the existence of which is logically dependent on the rule. Take for example, the concept of eating is not logically dependent on rules which regulate our eatings in such and such ways. For example, rules of eating in such and such ways are such that the practice of eating could exist independently of them. But rules of chess are such that the practice of chess could not have existed, but could only have existed in virtue of these rules. The concept of chess is logically dependent on the rules of chess. He says that constitutive rules have a distinctive feature compared to merely regulative rules, which is that they are almost tautological in character, in the sense that, for example, the rules of castling in chess are definitional of what castling is. They create the very possibility of castling. Since castling is nothing more than a move in chess, the rules of castling can appear now as a rule, now as an analytic truth based on the meaning of castling in chess. So to recapitulate, according to Williamson, constitutive rules are essential to the acts that they govern, and they necessarily govern all the instances of those acts. According to Searle, constitutive rules have this definitional aspect. They are tautological in a sense, and they can be considered as analytic truth. Now, I just want to finish my short video by suggesting that it seems to me that these two ways of characterizing constitutive rules are not homogeneous and give rise to two different conceptions of constitutive rules.